It will not be long because truth crushed earth will rise again.
Yes, sir.
How long? Not long.
Yes, sir.
Because no lie can live forever.
Yes, sir.
How long? Not long.
How long?
Because you shall reap what you sow.
Yes.
Martin Luther King had a wonderful way of speaking. One of his congregation members said he could charm the heart right out of your body.
How long? Not long.
Not long.
Because mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Martin Luther King was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1929, the son of a minister of the Ebenezer Baptist Church. He was an exceptional student, interested in a career in medicine or law. But the president of his college convinced him that he should go into the ministry.
He was a combination of qualities. He had a tender heart, but a very tough intellect.
Martin Luther King experienced a period during his early years of bitterness, of anger against racism. Once being compelled to stand up all night, coming back from a triumphant debate in the southern part of his state. Another time, he returns south, and the first thing that happens is when the train crosses the Mason-Dixon line, he's unable to have a meal without going behind a curtain.
When he was in college, he also discovered Gandhi and Thoreau and their doctrines of nonviolent resistance, and they made a tremendous impression upon him.
We, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, have been engaged in a nonviolent protest against injustices and indignities experienced on city buses.
In 1955, King found he could stir black multitudes as he put his personal power behind the successful bus boycott of the Montgomery transit system.
We, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, do now and will continue to carry on our mass protest.
Two months later, his house was dynamited by white supremacists. Quickly, he was made leader of the new Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and he was on his way to civil rights glory and martyrdom.
Throughout the 1960s, like Gandhi, Martin Luther King was jailed over and over again.
This is a nonviolent protest. We're depending on moral and spiritual forces, using the method of passive resistance. Even if we have to receive violence, we will not return violence.
In 1963, he joined in a march in Birmingham, Alabama, and there faced Bull Connor, the tough police chief, and his snarling dogs.
Many marchers who are preyed upon by hoses, high-powered water hoses, huge dogs, trained dogs, police dogs, armed police, paddy wagons, visible, clear indications of people being beaten, flogged, and in the open with police batons.
The world watched on TV. No longer could the man and his message be ignored. In 1963, King delivered his world-shaking "I Have a Dream" speech before 250,000 people.
The speech that Martin King gave from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in August of 1963 was the electric moment in the March on Washington.
As I looked around, some people I could see tears coming down some people's eyes. There were tears coming down my cheek. He raised the sense of the possible.
When we allow freedom reign, when we let it rain from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, Catholic will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
It filled me with a sense of optimism that I was standing in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing with my little life as it was.
And the next year, in 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize.
On the 28th of March, he led sanitation department strikers through the streets of Memphis. Violence erupted. A 16-year-old black was killed. 62 people were injured and 200 arrested.
I just want to do God.
On the night of April 3rd, Dr. King addressed 2,000 of his followers and alluded to death threats that he'd received. But he said, I've been to the mountaintop. I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm just going to do God's will.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you.
Dr. King's unconcern caught up to him on the very next day. It was April 5th, and King and his lieutenants met at the Lorraine Motel in a rundown part of Memphis.
Across the way, in number 422.5 South Main Street, in a semi-flop house, was James Earl Ray, an ex-convict and a drifter.
He'd checked in earlier in the afternoon under the name John Willard and had locked himself in a communal bathroom that overlooked the Lorraine Motel. He attached a telescope sight to a pump-action, high-powered rifle. At 6 p.m., King emerged onto the balcony of his room to talk to the Reverend Jesse Jackson in the courtyard below. He asked that "Precious Lord, Take My Hand" be played at the night's rally.
At about 6:02, that man steadied himself in the bathtub, opened the window, steadied a .30-06 rifle, and when Martin Luther King came out onto the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, about 205 feet away, pulled the trigger and put a soft point bullet through the neck and spinal cord of Dr. King.
Suddenly, Dr. King clutched his throat. A bullet had pierced his throat and his spinal cord, and he sank to the balcony. His tie had been ripped off by the force of the blast. Martin Luther King only lived for another hour. He died at 7:05 p.m.
In the immediate wake of the assassination, the cities exploded. Some 100 cities, I think, erupted in violence. I remember that I was in the Library of Congress on the 5th floor, and as I looked out the window, I saw puffs of smoke rising over the city as an incredible sight.
The funeral for Martin Luther King was massive, with 250,000 people attending. His coffin rode in a rude farm wagon pulled by 2 mules.
There were representatives from all forms of government, except the white population of Memphis, where business was conducted as usual. James Earl Ray, Martin Luther King's assassin, had already escaped. He left a neatly wrapped package next door in the doorway of an amusement arcade, and in it was the gun, a nail clipper, a radio with his prison ID on it, and his fingerprints all over everything.
Ray was a lifelong petty criminal and not very good at his trade. This first son of poor parents spent more time in jail than out of it.
It would take months before James Earl Ray was captured. And in that interim, he traveled extensively with various passports and under various aliases.
Ray flew to London from Canada, from there to Lisbon, and later back to London. He was finally arrested as he boarded a Brussels-bound jet at Heathrow Airport.
James Earl Ray was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility ever of parole, and he is today in a maximum security prison.
Of all the American assassins, James Earl Ray seems to be the only one who was paid. How did he get all that money to travel all those distances? And most of all, how did a petty thief become the assassin of a major world figure?
In the minds of many, the answer was simple: easy money and vicious people to pay it. The assassin or assassins didn't get what they wanted out of their murder. 7 days after Dr. King's death, major civil rights legislation was signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson. Still, the assassination of King's moral power, the power of being seen as right in both the dream and the methods to achieve it, spilled blood in the streets. An America balanced on a knife edge cut itself in two without his temperance. King's assassination changed America in a way that would have broken his great heart.